Hello students, here comes a new video of the chapter 3, that is the plant kingdom. In this video we are going to talk about the pteridophytes. Okay, we will move on to the slides. Here in this slide we are discussing about what are pteridophytes, how they came into existence, or means how long they have been in our earth. So before the flowering plants existing on our land, these plants that look like the ferns, they may be dominating. That means they already took their place. That large area is covered with these plants that look like ferns, and they are actually from hundreds of millions of years. Okay, that is, before this flowering plants arising, our land is dominated or completely covered with the plants that look like these ferns. That is actually the hundreds of millions of years. And you all can see that these ferns that are growing in someone's gardens or in the backyards, it's completely covered with the green colored ferns. And these pteridophytes, they are the plants that flourish in the cool, damp and shady habitat, although some species grow well in the sandy soil conditions. Okay, that is, plants, these pteridophytes, they are the plants that flourish in the cool, damp and shady habitat. They love the shady habitat, they love the cool habitat, they live mostly in the damp area. Although there may be exceptions, right? So some species go well in the sandy soil conditions also, and they occupy a special place in the plant evolution as they were the first terrestrial plants, possess vascular tissue and true root, stem and leaves. Okay, that is, in plant evolution, as the evolution of the plants, these pteridophytes, they occupy a special place. Why they have this? They occupy this special place. They were the first terrestrial plants that have the vascular tissue, well developed the vascular tissue, and they also have true stem, roots and the leaves. And the ferns are the type of pteridophytes. Examples of the pteridophytes, the first means example that is coming to our mind is a fern. That is, pteridophytes, they are the plants that flourish or grow well in the cool, damp and shady habitat, and some species will also grow in the well sandy soil conditions. And they actually occupy a special place in the plant evolution as they were the first terrestrial plant which possess the vascular tissue, as well as they have the true roots, stems and leaves. Examples of the pteridophytes, that is a ferns, they are also included in the these are the type of pteridophytes. Examples of ferns. Okay. Then pteridophytes, they show many characteristics of their ancestors. The leaf of the pteridophytes are large as in the ferns, small in the case of Selaginella. The leaf may be large or small, large in the case of the ferns and the small in the case of Selaginella. Pteridophytes are cryptogams. Cryptogams means what is it? Their main mode of reproduction is hidden. Their means of reproduction or the mode of reproduction is hidden. They are the cryptogams, and they do not produce flowers or seeds. They don't produce the flowers. As a result, there is not be any seeds, and they reproduce by the spores instead. That is, they do not produce the flowers, fruits or seeds. Then how they reproduce? They reproduce by the spores, and they contain the vascular tissue, but xylem, vessels and the phloem companion cells are absent. They contain the vascular tissue, but they lack or they don't have the xylem vessels as well as the phloem companion cells. And pteridophytes, they are widely used as ornamental plants, soil binders and for medical or medicinal purposes. That is, pteridophytes, they show the many characteristics of their ancestors. They may possess the large leaf and the small leaf, like large leaf like the ferns and the smaller leaves like Selaginella. Pteridophytes, they are the cryptogams. They do not produce the flowers or seeds, so they reproduce by the spores, and they contain vascular tissue, but they lack the xylem vessels and the phloem companion cells. And they are widely used as ornamental plants, the soil binders as well as for the medicinal purposes. And the classification of pteridophytes. Here the classification mainly based on the organization of the plant body. Based on the plant body, that includes the nature of the leaves and the location of the sporangia. Okay, that is based on the plant body, whether they have the roots, stem, leaves, or what type of leaves they are producing, or and also along with that the nature of the leaves and the location of the sporangia is also including in the classification criteria. Okay, the pteridophytes, based on these characteristics or based on the nature of the leaves, location of the sporangia and the organization of the plant body, they are divided into 4 main classes: Psilopsida, Lycopsida, Sphenopsida, Pteropsida. Okay, that is Psilopsida, Lycopsida, Sphenopsida, Pteropsida. First one is the Psilopsida. They are the most primitive forms of the pteridophytes, and their stem is photosynthetic and are dichotomously branched. Okay, and the rhizoid are present. Leaves are mostly absent. You can see the small. If you see it's like leaves are there, yes. No leaves like that. It's a very small size leaf. That is, leaves are mostly absent. It looks like a stem. And the sporophyte is homosporous. Homosporous means single type of spores are produced. Dichotomous means many branching come from the single stem, that is called dichotomous. That is Psilopsida, they are the most primitive forms. Their stem is photosynthetic and dichotomously branched, and they have the rhizoid. Leaves are mostly absent, and the sporophyte is homosporous. Homosporous, that means a single type of spores are produced in the sporangia. Example, Psilotum and Tessipteris or Mesipteris. You can either pronounce M silent or T silent. That is Mesipteris or Tessipteris. Next is the Lycopsida. Lycopsida, they are commonly known as club moss. They are commonly known as club moss. They have well differentiated plant body with adventitious root, stem, rhizophores and leaves. That is, they are commonly known as a club moss. They are well differentiated plant body with adventitious tissue. Adventitious tissue means not the tissue, sorry, adventitious root. Adventitious root means the other than the rhizoid or the root nodules, from somewhere else, other places the roots are developing, maybe on the some nodes on the stems the roots are developing. That is called adventitious root. Then we can cut that part and plant it, and we can produce a new plant. That is called adventitious root, the advantage. And in stem they have well developed stem is there, rhizophore is there, and the leaves are there. The sporophyte is homosporous or heterosporous. They may be, sometimes it is simple spores, sometimes both type of large and small microspore and megaspores are produced. Example is a Selaginella and Lycopodium. This is a Selaginella. You can see the small leaves here, right? Small leaves. That is Selaginella. Next is a Sphenopsida. In the case of Sphenopsida, they are known as hose tail. You can see in the picture is a hose tail structure, that is called hose tails. Lycopsida, they are called as a club moss. Sphenopsida, they are called as a hose tail. They well differentiated plant body with the root is there, arising from the nodes of the underground rhizome. Okay, then stem is there, and they have the scaly leaves. Homosporous, single spores. Sporangia are borne on strobili. There is a cone-like structures. A cone-like structure that is called strobili or cones. That is sporangia. They are borne on a cone-like structures, and in the sporangia the spores are developed. Example, Equisetum. This is a picture of the Equisetum. That is the Sphenopsida. They are known as the hose tail, and they have well differentiated plant body. That is a root arising from the nodes from the rhizoid, underground rhizoid. They have the stems and the scaly leaves are present. They are homosporous, and sporangia are borne on strobili or the cone. Example, Equisetum. Next is the Pteropsida. The Pteropsida commonly known as the ferns. Pteropsida, they are commonly known as the fern. Well differentiated plant body with the roots, stems and leaves. The picture you can clearly, it's visible, right? The sporophyte is homosporous or heterosporous. There may be single type of spores or maybe two types of spores are produced, that is heterosporous, this is different spores are produced. Anthrozoids are multiflagellated. In this picture you can see this is an anthrozoid, you have multiple flagellas are there, right. Example, Pteris, Diopteris, Adianthum. This is a picture of the Diopteris, that is Pteropsida. They are commonly known as the fern. This is an example of the fern. And the first picture I showed, second picture I showed you the picture of the Selaginella. That is well differentiated plant body with the root, stems and the leaves. Here you can see the large leaves. Okay. That is Sporophyte is homosporous or heterosporous, and those are multiflagellated. Examples Pteris, Diopteris and Adianthum. Next is the life cycle of the Pteridophytes, shows life cycle of the Pteridophytes. And in the life cycle of Pteridophytes, they show the alternation of generation. That is, alternation of generation means there is a haploid gametophytic phase that is followed by the diploid sporophytic generations are there. That is called a alternation of generation. That is, alternation means one type of, that is if it is a haploid gametophyte, then the diploid sporophyte. Again it's a haploid, it's a called one cycle, in a cycle it is alternate, one haploid gametophyte, diploid sporophyte, that is a one cycle. Then again haploid gametophyte, diploid sporophyte, that is the alternation of generation is like that. That is, one phase it is haploid gametophyte, then it changed to diploid sporophyte, again haploid gametophyte, that is a not a continuous one cycle is going. Here it is, that is called alternation of generation. Both haploid gametophyte and diploid sporophytic generation phase are there, and they are independent and free living. Okay. And the life cycle of Pteridophyte begins with the plant body as a sporophyte bears a sporangia, which are subtended by the leaf-like appendages called the sporophylls. That is, life cycle of the Pteridophyte begins with the plant body that has a sporophyte that bears a sporangia. That is a plant body that has a sporophyte that contains the sporangia. These are subtended on by a leaf-like appendages called sporophylls. Okay. That is, life cycle of the Pteridophyte that shows alternation of generation, that is diploid gametophyte and diploid sporophytic generations are there. They are alternate with each other and are independent and free living. Life cycle of Pteridophyte that begins with a plant body that has a sporophyte that contains the sporangia, and these are present on a leaf-like appendages called as a sporophylls. However, in some genera like Equisetum, these sporophytes, that is initially in the initial slides I told you, there is a sporangia that is present on a stalk-like structures that called as strobili or the cones. That is what he is saying. However, in some genera, exception is there, that the Equisetum, sporophylls might form distinct and compact structure called the strobili. Instead of the leaf-like structures or leaf-like appendages, the sporophyll is a structure that called strobili or the cones. On the sporophyll, there is a sporangia that contains a the sporophyte that contains the sporangia. Okay. And sporangium that produces spores in the spore mother cells by meiosis, which germinate into gametophyte called the prothallus. Initially, the sporophyte is produced in the spores, or that is spores are generated in the sporangium that is present on the sporophyte. Okay, the sporophyte that contains the sporangium. Inside the sporangium there are spores, and these spores are produced in the spore mother cells by the meiosis, and which on germination produce a gametophyte, and these gametophyte are called as the prothallus. And here the prothallus is small multicellular and free living and mainly photosynthetic gametophyte. The gametophyte of the Pteridophytes are called as the prothallus. These prothallus, they are the small multicellular and they are free living and mainly photosynthetic, which grow only in the cool, damp and shady places. The prothallus, they also bears the male and female sex organ, the antheridium and archegonium. The prothallus that bears the bears a male and female sex organs, that is antheridium and archegonium. This antheridium produces a male gamete called androzoids, whereas archegonium that produces the egg. That is prothallus, that is a gametophyte of the Pteridophytes are called as a prothallus. They are multicellular, small, free-living and mainly photosynthetic, which grow well in the cool, damp and shady, only in the cool, damp and shady environment. And prothallus that also bears a male and female sex organ called as antheridium and archegonium. Antheridium produces a male gamete called androzoids, whereas archegonium produces an egg. And when released, these androzoids, that is from the antheridium, the androzoids are released into the water and they travel through the water and eventually reaches and comes in contact with the mouth of the archegonium. Okay. Once it comes in contact with the archegonium, what will happen? These androzoids, each of these androzoids, they fuses with the egg and produces a zygote. Okay, that is antheridium that produces a male gamete called as androzoids, whereas archegonium produces an egg. And when androzoids are released into the water, they travel through the water and finally they touches or comes in contact with the mouth of the archegonium, where each of these androzoids fuses with the egg and forms a zygote. And this zygote initially develops into an young embryo, which further develops into multicellular and well differentiated young sporozoid the sporophyte, and ultimately into mature sporophyte. Okay, that male gamete, that is androzoid, fuses with the egg and produces a zygote. This zygote develops into young embryo, which further develop into a multicellular and well differentiated young sporophyte and ultimately into mature sporophyte. This completes the life cycle of the pteridophyte. From the sporophyte, again spores are released. The spores germinate to form the gametophyte. This gametophyte again produces a male and female gametes. Okay, and they comes in contact with male gamete, the androzoids, the female archegonium that produces the egg. They comes in contact with each other and produces zygote. They develop into embryo, then into young sporophyte, then into mature sporophyte. Like that, the life cycle continues, which is divided into sporophytic phase and gametophytic phase. Sporophytic phase, spores are produced. Gametophytic phase, here the gametophyte develop into that comes in contact with and fuses with the zygote and again it converted to sporophyte. Okay, in the sporophytic phase, the spores are produced, right? The spores that develops into gametophyte. From there, it produces the gametes, male and female gamete. Then that cycle turn to the sporophyte. Like that, it continues. That's the alternation of generation. And here, sporophytic phase is the most dominant phase. Okay, that's the dominant phase of the pteridophytes, the sporophytic phase. And the pteridophytes that can be homosporous or heterosporous. Okay. In the previous slides, we already told about when classifying there are 4 classes. There can we see the homosporous, some are there, heterosporous and homosporous may be there. So here pteridophytes that can be homosporous and heterosporous, either one or both. In the case of homosporous, pteridophytes produces the similar kind of, homo means same, sporous means spores. The spores are of same kind. In hetero, that means different. Pteridophyte produces 2 different types of spores, large or megaspores and small or microspores. Megaspores germinate into female gametophyte which produces egg. Microspores into male gametophyte which produces androzoids. Okay, that in the previous slides we told that the sporophyte spores are from the sporangium spores are released, right? Here the spores heterosporous, that means 2 different kinds of spores are produced, large or megaspores, small or microspores. Megaspores that develop into female gametophyte. Okay, megaspores that develop into female gametophyte. In the previous slide, we told that the spores are germinated to form the gametophyte. Right, here megaspores germinate into female gametophyte which produces the egg. Microspores into male gametophyte which produces the androzoids. Egg and androzoid fuse to form a zygote which develops into young embryo. That is, egg and the androzoids fuse to form the zygote which develops into young embryo. This embryo gives rise to again a sporophyte. Okay, I think you understood this one. Next is a picture showing the life cycle of the pteridophyte. Here you can see this is a sporophyte. Okay, it's a plant-like structure. There is a leaf that bears the spore of the sporangium, and you can see the sporophyte. This is a sporophyte. This is a sporangium is there. From the spores are released, and these spores germinate into gametophyte that is called a prothallus. From the prothallus, it is differentiated into male or female gametophyte. Okay, the female and male gametophyte, that is a megaspores are developed into female, microspores are developed into male, and female that produces the egg, and the male that produces the androzoids, and again it develops into sporophyte. See, this is the life cycle of the pteridophyte. Next is as a conclusion, let's say Pteridophyta is one of the older group of plants, that is before the flowering plants arises they are dominated in our landscapes and the plant kingdom, and they have evolved much earlier than the angiosperms, and they are actually the true plants to adapt life on the land. And the primary characteristic of pteridophytes, they are the seedless vascular plant, and they show alternation of generation in the life cycle. And furthermore, the sporophyte has a true leaves, stems and roots. They reproduce by the spores. They don't produce the flowers or seeds. They reproduce by the spores which are developed in the sporangia. And the spores may be homosporous or heterosporous. So what is a short of the Pteridophyta? They are the older group of the plants in the plant kingdom. They are evolved much earlier than the angiosperms. They are the first true plants to adapt a life on the land, and the characteristics, they are the seedless plants. They are vascular plants that shows the alternation of generation in the life cycle. And sporophytes have true roots, stems and leaves, and on this sporophyte they produces the spores in the sporangium. Okay, in the sporangia or the sporangium plural, and the spores may be either homosporous or heterosporous that develop into gametophyte. Then the male and female gametes are released. From there it fuses to form the zygote, embryo, then sporophyte. These are about the pteridophytes. Thank you.